Okay, job's working out, move's all done. What else is on my list of things to do? Yeah, I should probably take care of that. Yeah, about time I got back to this. Earlier this year, I was conned into taking a look at the 1974 Lupin live-action movie. For Lupin fans, it's a decent, if albeit dated flick that plays off of a paradigm I don't feel fits for Lupin, the origin story, which shanghaied the actual strength of most Lupin adventures, the actual heist, and the horrible people they pull it off against. And as I still haven't got my damn Dot Hack collection back, I figured since GU Last Recode is out now, I should probably deal with this altered conditions to the deal before the year is out. The 2014 film, however, is a bit notorious. Critics and audiences widely deriding the movie, despite several actors in the film being recognized and applauded for other works. Among the cast, for example, is Go Ayano, whose career I've discussed before as he was part of Kamen Rider Faiz and the first Rurouni Kenshin film as its counterpart to Gain. And there is also Tetsuji Tamayama, who is known among Sentai fans for playing the breakout and most popular character of Hyakuju Sentai Gao Ranger, Gao Silver himself, Shirogane. As I've commented on elsewhere, often being a starring or recurring character in a Toei show leads to a wealth of other career options later down the line, so it's not surprising to see two alumni of their works here. But this movie probably didn't do their careers any favors. This is a movie so bad that Amazon, my now current employer, hid the film inside of the sales space of other Lupin DVDs simply to have it appear to have gotten good ratings. Not helped that this movie, despite receiving input from him, did not have the blessing of Kazuhiko Kato, it actually being stuck in development hell since as early as 2003. It was originally in the hands of Gerald Molin, known for Schindler's List and Minority Report, who wanted to Americanize the cast and take liberties to make the story work. In other words, this could have easily been yet another Netflix's Death Note, Last Airbender, or Dragon Ball Evolution where they didn't even try to see what made the franchise work. Ironically, that movie fell through after former astronaut Buzz Aldrin sued Malden's production company for breach of contract and fraud. I wish I was making that up. As much as this movie is disliked, we dodged a fucking bullet. Thus, the adaptation rights were eventually sold to producer Mataichiro Yamamoto, who then hired writer-director Ryuhei Kitamura to, well, do the writing and directing, as they had previously worked together on several films such as Azumi. And Kitamura, I don't like his work. I've seen some films of his and not enjoyed them, and I'm betting my Tokusatsu watching viewers have probably seen at least one movie he has made. Yeah, he wrote and directed Final Wars. I don't get why people like Final Wars. I think it's dumb. To their credit, after getting this project approved, the two then spent several months ingesting all of the then existing Lupin media before putting anything to paper. So, you can't say they didn't do their research. But neither man really seemed to understand any of it, as they decided to do yet another origin story in a franchise that does not, nor has ever needed an origin story for its storytelling engine. And the best one we've had has been The Woman Called Fujiko Mine, which was airing when these guys were writing this movie. They then hired a production assistant and LA journalist named Joseph O'Brien, who had not done said research, nor was screenplay adaptation his strength, to collaborate with them on writing said screenplay, of which 3 drafts were made, which Yamamoto then cherry-picked among the 3 into the final script without any revision, which is quite noticeable with the film's schizophrenic focus. None of which actually focused on Lupin, the title character, as the protagonist of the movie. How do you do that? And none of them seemed to grasp that the series was always meant to be tongue-in-cheek, and they wanted it to be a straight drama, which, while Lupin can have serious and dramatic moments and stories, Lupin's death in Missed by a Dollar, or the injuries he takes trying to save Clarice and Castle of Cagliostro immediately coming to mind, to say nothing of The Woman Called Fujiko Mune, which was very dramatically focused. It's more known for its comedy and adventurous fun, which Yamamoto wanted to downplay immensely, while Yamamoto also said Kitamura wanted to not focus on Lupin at all, but the film's eventual Gary Stu character that had to be dialed back in revision. So you have a rescued from development hell project, conscripted by three guys with a flawed perspective of the series, focused on a character that is not one of the main 5 cast members the franchise revolves around, and crafting a drama for a series that doesn't take itself seriously to begin with. Is anyone surprised this became an unmitigated disaster? We open the film in media res with a group of thieves part of the burglary ring The Works, which Lupin, played by Shun Oguri, is part of. And thus making this not actually an origin story as they claimed it to be, as Lupin is already a professional notorious thief, just not head of his own clique. They are attempting to steal the first Olympic medal from a museum in Singapore, his teammates being there, but involving Fujiko Mine, played by Mesa Kuroki, and 2 guys named Jiro and Pierre that have never been part of the lore before and matter little to the film. And of course, then there's our actual creator's pet for the film, Michael, who proceeds to double-cross a lot of them and claim the prize for himself, after everyone had done the work for him. Though the work they did was ridiculously competent as they're all competing against each other, each making their own way into the building and competing to claim the prize even though it might trip up the other's part of things. Fujiko using a simple rigging line to get over to it once they reach the final room, with one of the second bananas using parkour to jump around the pressure sensors, the movie lavishly zooming in on each step and actually uses to get around, and the last using a jetpack? You have not established this is a universe where super tech like that exists. Granted, Lupin movies have a history of playing fast and loose with that kind of thing, but it's actually set up instead of, hey, this exists, isn't it cool? Film critic Yuichi Maeda, when rating the film a 3 out of 100, wrote, "The exhibitionism of the movie, isn't this action cool? Isn't this pose cool? This line, this costume, this, etc., all feels extremely forced. And more importantly, not one of these things is cool at all. The minute you try to make everything cool, everything becomes cheap instead." And he's absolutely right. Oddly enough, that is a more articulated version of my criticism of Godzilla Final Wars and the other Kitamura movies I've seen. He is a writer and director more focused on style and flash over substance. How things appear over why they must appear. And worse, this entire scene was pointless. For as Fujiko's about to grab the medal, why is she wearing fingerless gloves? You do realize they can get fingerprints off of anything she may have touched, right? It's a wise precaution to take that even an amateur thief pulling this kind of operation would know. But it's pointless as the stand housing the medal is just blown out from under it, which alerts security. Oh look! Fingerprints you have just given away! The one who blew it open is, of course, Lupin, who leaves the rest of his team to get away on their own. Wait, when did he plant explosives? How did he get them in the building? How did he get into the building? How did he avoid the same sensors the others were avoiding?
One kiss. Just one little kiss. And it's yours.
Mesa Kuroki and Shun Oguri were actually very well cast for this film and for their roles. The pair have been in a number of movies together, such as Crow Zero and its sequel, and the prior working relationship gives them good chemistry, which was needed to pick the cat and also cat flirtatious, would be called a romance, Lupin and Fujiko normally share. Among all the movie's criticisms, not a single one has ever been directed at the capabilities, talents, and efforts of the cast. Unfortunately, this exchange fails as, instead of threatening force, Fujiko would have seduced him. She's a femme fatale that is Lupin's ultimate weak point, as she's one of the few on the planet that can outthink him through the fact he cares so much about her. While that is ultimately a two-way street between them, Fujiko of the two is more willing to use anything to her advantage to get what she wants. And as that exchange showed, what probably didn't do the film any favors is it's performed simultaneously in English and Japanese, the film constantly switching between the two because its writers were bilingual. And by their understanding of the character, since he's European, he should be speaking a Western language. One wonders why he wasn't speaking French, since descendant of a French gentleman thief. But that's not the problem here. The problem is much of the cast is not fluent in English. Thus, they mess up their inflections and emoting throughout the entire film, which just kills characterization. This is actually why when converting the movie to put into my editor that I had to leave in the entire subtitle track, as otherwise anyone not familiar with both languages would find the entire film unintelligible. Japan actually was a bit better off in this regard, as they eventually had it redubbed fully into Japanese. Though this scene gets dumber as, instead of doing the smart thing and escaping with Lupin by pretending to acquiesce and thus lift the medal off of him, Fujiko stays behind just so we can have a fight scene. A fight scene with a character that normally avoids fighting. Electrocution does not work that way. You know, in a comedic animated film or show, you can do something like that, but it doesn't work so well in live action. I'm only 8 minutes into this. This is where Michael enters the picture and proceeds to set the road on fire to stop Lupin. He reveals that he set bombs in the group's earpieces. How is a really big damn question, and in fact a bigger one than Lupin using explosions to get the medal. And thus uses that to threaten Fujiko's life, which makes him hand it over. Now, while Lupin is very much a think smarter, not harder character, I don't really think they understood how he worked. He's very flamboyant in how he pulls his heists, full of subterfuge tactics to make people think differently and buy into an expectation against how he's actually performing his stunts. He thinks at an odd angle to everyone else, that's why it always seems he's 10 steps ahead. This movie does not showcase that, instead more reliant on him using brute force tactics that go off with a bang, being very direct and unsubtle in, well, everything. And his rivalrous antagonist, Michael, is the exact same way, except without the restraints of morality. And often what he is pulling off is bullshit, as it's not established how the hell this trick up his sleeve could have even come about to begin with. This is again a direct quote, this time about Michael Lee from Kitamura himself. Lupin's basically a Superman. He's wiser than everyone and he's always 10 steps ahead. So Mataichiro Yamamoto thought, and this part I agree with, it's extremely hard to make drama around Lupin because there's not much struggle. He's always right and he always wins. But we still need somebody who can drive the story. That's why we came up with the idea of this enemy character, Michael Lee. But then the problem was, we're not making Michael Lee, we're making Lupin III. Then why did you create a character to drive the plot if the protagonist wasn't going to? The entire point of Lupin's adventures is he is driven by his own scheming and the situations he falls into to do what he wants and take what he wants as, and this really does show the merit of the freaking 1974 movie, he thinks everything in the world is already his. So the challenge for the character is even obtaining it. And a Superman? Yeah, no. As I commented about the 1974 movie, his powers are all comedic exaggerations lent by the anime medium. He's just a really smart con man and thief. And as Fujiko in any entry except this one shows, you can outwit a con man. Hell, Lupin has failed on numerous occasions. That only motivates him to one-up the guy who got him in return. To compare Lupin to Superman implies that he has no faults or you can't beat him, and that just isn't so. And is even less applicable since you made this an origin story, where he lacks that experience to be 10 steps ahead. But do you show that? No! You create a new character specifically designed to be better than the inexperienced version of a god of thievery. I mean, this is explicit Gary Stu territory, the likes of which I've not seen since either Q-Ranger's Lucky, Starlight Glimmer, or what was the last thing Shoji Onomura wrote? Then again, it's really amazing that Shoji Onomura, who I have repeatedly called out as a hack writer for his failure to do research concerning the characters he uses in movies he writes, actually seemed to understand all of this more in the Lupin films he wrote. You're writing worse in this movie than a noted and repeatedly derided incompetent. I guess everything's relative. In Hong Kong, we meet the eternal hunter of Lupin, ICPO agent Inspector Hogan from Thor. And now there's going to be some nut out there trying to figure out if the MacGuffin of the film is an Infinity Stone. Because Marvel Cinematic Universe.
俺はインターポールの銭形光一警部だ。無駄にしている時間はないからさっさと始めよう。
And again, this is perfect casting. Though this more shows how much it fails as a modernized origin story if Zenigata is already on Lupin's trail. And I keep saying that as they did promote this movie as being a modernized Lupin origin story in interviews. Moreover, because of the split English-Japanese of this film, Tadanobu Asano is the absolute worst of the cast in emoting as Zenigata, despite getting the look down and him being a good actor. As whenever he's speaking in English, he's terrible at emoting Zenigata's rough, gruff, and direct self, which does come through in the parts of the film he's speaking Japanese. Asano has much the same problem in the Thor movies as well, I've found, which more works there than here. He braves Hong Kong on The Works and their members, each a superstar thief, which thus again begs the question why they teamed up for something so petty, the lot having been MIA for a year, as they've apparently been employed by a billionaire named Thomas Dawson, who the lot are shown reporting to at his mansion, among the patrons being Daisuke Jigen, played by Shirogane himself, Tetsuji Tamiyama, who Lupin already knows. Lupin's seen as jealous over Fujiko being with Michael. But the fact you're even flirting with him doesn't help the self-insert Gary Stu reading of said character when he's party to the affections of the only leading woman in the franchise.
Results are all that count, right? Lupin?
Threatening to blow her head off one second, charming her the next.
One thing everybody knows about you. When it comes to her, you're hopeless.
Yes, but no one but Lupin's inner circle is supposed to have realized that. Zenigata, with his ever-present stakeout ramen, surveys the works meeting with Dawson. Dawson shown with some type of package for Lupin alongside a picture of his parents, as Dawson is a relative of his, before proceeding to introduce even more thievery characters that will matter little to the movie, and restating the modus operandi of the gentlemen thieves. Steal only for the rich, never the downtrodden. All of this because Dawson is stepping down as the head of the works. Last night's theft, a test to see who should succeed him as a leader, and it being revealed Fujiko lifted the medal off of Michael.
Results are all that count. Right, Michael?
Or she could have gotten it off of Lupin and removed Michael's character entirely. Wait, if they knew that in advance, then why was Fujiko even participating? She doesn't want power, she wants to be rich. Well, okay, I could see her wanting to steal something priceless from Dawson's vault, but that's really not how this is framed. Dawson also expressing his disappointment in Lupin failing, speaking that Michael is the anti-Lupin, and the two together would be unstoppable. In the vault, we are shown the Crimson Heart of Cleopatra, our MacGuffin for the movie, a half-completed necklace missing its central stone, telling a story about its creation, before revealing he called them all in, as before he retires, he wants to see it completed. But no, he'll never see that. For Michael is the anti-Lupin, meaning he should lack morality, and he does, calling in his own gang to raid the place, killing Jiro and Dawson, alongside stealing the necklace, all playing to the adage there is no honor among thieves.
Michael, why are you doing this?
Edward then.
Who?
He was a good man.
Yeah. He believed in you, and he paid with his life.
That tells us nothing. In fact, that tells us less than nothing.
Let me explain!
Lupin, of course, has no reaction to his uncle and father figure being murdered in front of him, instead focusing on Fujiko deciding to refuse to go with Michael as more important than family, when in fact Lupin's reaction to that death would be more impactful in having Fujiko decide to take a stand between two similar men, it more framed as a tragedy of Michael's own actions removing the possibility of love, and the scene giving more impact to the guy who spends most of the film being the movie's freaking villain. Michael's team escapes, Lupin only now shown grieving over Dawson, but pulled away by Jigen so they're not caught by the cops' remaining forces who'd otherwise been devastated by Michael's men. Jigen is introduced properly at Dawson's funeral, Lupin asking if he wants a job, with Jigen agreeing since Lupin intends to take down Michael. Fujiko also deciding to help by going through the dealers Michael would need to collaborate with to hawk the necklace.
俺たちは泥棒だ。マイケルが盗んだものを盗み返す。利子付きだな。
1 year later, we finally get something closer to the expectations of Lupin's thievery exploits, but again with the stylization that robs all substance from it. They've ended up in Thailand, with no leads even after a year, with Fujiko having repeatedly sent them on wild goose chases. I wonder why they never decided to stake out the ruby, with Lupin meeting Fujiko to continue their game of cat and also cat, of Lupin trying to claim a kiss, but the framing with them fighting over it almost gives off an abusive vibe, which is broken off as the entire thing is a trap. Dick move, Fujiko, especially concerning the nature of their current corroboration, but at least it's in character. While Zenigata arrests him, he reveals it's in part to talk about the Dawson affair from last year, the book from earlier shown to him, which contains blueprints and information about the Ark, a super security bank for the ultra-wealthy, run by a crime kingpin named Pravik. And here's where we see some sign of the research Kitamura and Yamamoto put in. Zenigata, while wanting to arrest Lupin because he is a criminal, recognizes that Lupin is ultimately harmless despite the chaos he causes, thus is not adverse to teaming up with him to take down a more corrupt and harmful organization or individual. It's part of the respect the two have for each other, and why Zenigata is the only cop on the planet who ever even gets close to taking him down. But the thing is, Zenigata would not team up with him without an impetus forcing him into it, which would not come from just Lupin wanting to take down Michael, who Zenigata has also been tracking, and found is currently arranging a sale with Pravik. Presumably to sell the necklace, as this notebook about the Ark would likely be so they could steal the ruby he has to complete it. Thus, this is Zenigata's deal. He helps Lupin steal it, Lupin turns it over to him, and he uses it as evidence against Pravik and Michael. And in doing so, violates Zenigata's own morality in making him just another corrupt cop. And while Zenigata has abused his authority, usually when Lupin's gang involves him to aid in their plans, it's through the lens of using his authority of the law after a natural revelation, not outright. Again, an exemplar of this is Castle of Cagliostro, where after finding themselves in a fake money printing press, the evidence Zenigata obtained from being there was found to be inadmissible for performing a more clear raid on its owners due to the method by which it was obtained. Thus, part of Lupin's following plan, which involved him, was giving him a legitimate circumstance to arrest him. And that would be applicable to a thief turning over stolen goods to the police with no clear chain connecting who it was stolen from to it, without also involving conspiracy to commit a criminal act. Zenigata would need to be showcased as culpable in to present that connection to incriminate them. That evidence would be found inadmissible in court by count of perjury, anything else they would gather to convict them would be thrown out, and double jeopardy would attach to the crime preventing them from being tried. Most countries have double jeopardy clauses. Zenigata is gullible at times, but he's not stupid. But Lupin's still on board for this as it'll get him off, which makes me wonder why Zenigata didn't just tell Fujiko that as cleaning their slates, I would think she would also want to be in on. Lupin escapes, returning to his crew to tell him Michael's back, and representing the details of Pramuk. Lupin happy to take on this challenge, but finding Fujiko hesitant, citing the idea she's been protecting him from them despite promising to help take him down. He gives the journal to Pierre, who's still with them, so they can research the tech of the place to get in. Because none of the Lupin gang are exactly computer geniuses needed to address the tech issues of hacking into such a place. They can use them in more recent movies and specials and hack them, but it's not their forte, so I can understand Pierre's continued part in this. Michael meets with Pravik to sign a contract arranging the transaction, as after a worthless aside with Zenigata at a Taiwanese kendo dojo, Lupin tracks down Go Ayano! Dude's looking good after having died. Died again after turning into an undead sin against man, and then falling into the past to face Den-O. It never ceases to amuse me he went from facing a pinnacle of swordsmanship to portraying another pinnacle of swordsmanship like this, with the live-action films finally including Goemon Ishikawa the 13th, who Lupin also already knows. Wow, this really is an awful origin story. Goemon and Jigen having a pissing contest over which is better, swords or guns. Swords that turn into guns, clearly.
さすがに早いな。だが撃つ前に右肩が少し下がる。10センチ離れていたら当たってたぞ。
And then they kiss.